here. First, what we will do is we will start with having each candidate introduce themselves, and they have 2 minutes. And okay, Susan, why don't we start with you?
Litigators seem. Hi, my name is Susan Pickford, and I am running for Cumberland County Common Pleas Judge. I'm running as an independent because I don't believe politics belong in the courtroom. I was raised in Cumberland County, and I raised my children in Cumberland County. I went to Penn State and received a bachelor's degree in education, and I went to Dickinson School of Law to get my JD. I've tried over 200 jury trials. I've worked in 10 counties in Pennsylvania and 3 counties in California, mostly in criminal defense, but I've also done civil work. I've been had my own practice for 34 years, and I would like to be on the bench. A few of the things I would like to do is establish a veterans court. I believe we have over 20,000 veterans in Cumberland County. They tend to bump up against the criminal justice system from time to time, and they need specialized help. I would like to see our mental health court expanded. We do have one, but it's very limited. I would like to see it expanded to include some of the hardest cases to deal with, because those are the people that end up in our jails, and they don't belong there. They belong in treatment. I would like to see more fairness and personal contact in the county courts, and I hope you will consider electing me to be judge in Cumberland County.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Grayson, and I would like to thank you for coming out and educating yourself as to the candidates that are running for the offices that we have available now. And I would like to thank the organization for having us here. Thank you very much for moderating. So I'm Lisa Grayson, and I'm born and raised in Cumberland County. I have spent my entire life here, except for when I was on active duty orders, and then for that I've served all over the world. So I've been an attorney for 23 years. I've been in the military for 33 years. I left active duty and came back to Cumberland County so that I could raise my family here. I went to school locally, started at Hack, because when you're paying for it, it makes a difference where you go. Then went to Penn State, and then I went to Dickinson School of Law. So I am definitely very local. After law school, I went into private practice, little mom and pop practice, everything the average mom and pop would need. By the time I was in practice, I had 2 of my 3 children, so I was not going to work an 80-hour job in some glorified law firm. I wanted to stay local so that I could be active in my children's lives. So I've been a room mom, been doing all the field trips, and I continue to be active in their lives as well, and I think it makes a difference. After private practice, I went to the federal courts for 4 years and did death penalty work, and I actually was employed by the courts, worked for the courts. I was not on either side of that issue. After that, I went to my current position, which is as Register of Wills and Clerk of Orphans Court in the courthouse. So I see firsthand every day what we're missing in our courts. What we're missing is a strong presence for Orphans Court. Orphans Court deal with guardianships, adoptions, accountings, things that need a supervision by the court, and we have a weakness in the family law. And so that's something I want to bring as presence to the family law and the Orphans Court. And I also want to establish a veterans court. It's something I'm passionate about from my years in the service. Thank you very much.
Ron?
Good afternoon. I see that my name tag is spelled wrong, so the signs must be having a good effect, because it's Tomasko, not C-O. I'm glad the signs are affecting everyone.
Our apologies. But you do get points for looking like Tomasko.
I want to thank Capital Region Indivisible for hosting this event. My name is Ron Tomasko. I'm running for Court of Common Pleas in Cumberland County. I've been a resident of this county for 28 years now, raised my family in this county, married to my wife Joyce 24 years. We'll celebrate our 25th anniversary this February. I have 2 sons, Alex, who just came home from Penn State. He's a student athlete at Penn State University. He's a runner. And anyone who lives in Cumberland County, as I've said at multiple events, you've had to seen Alex run, because he runs like Forrest Gump around the county, and he's always running. My younger son, Nicholas, will graduate from Mechanicsburg area senior high school in a week. We hope, crossing our fingers, will be #1 in his class. As I said, I have strong roots in the community. I've also been a practitioner for 29 years in May. My background happens to be, I thought I would be a lawyer in the military, but it didn't work out that way. I was actually nominated and admitted to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, but they only admit about 200 students a year. I was 221, so I was on the wait list at West Point. I don't like waiting. So I went to Penn State, got my bachelor's degree at Penn State in pre-law, graduated in the top 2% of my class, and then I went to the University of Pittsburgh School of Law in Pittsburgh on a partial academic scholarship. After I graduated from Pitt, I worked for a very large Washington, D.C. based firm, and then came back to central Pennsylvania and have been practicing in the private practice of law for the last 28 years. I really believe that real-world experience is going to be beneficial, and that's why I'd like your vote come May 21st. Thanks.
Thank you. Derek?
Hi, I'm Derek Clepper. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. I've been practicing law since 2003, worked in the domestic relations office for over 13 years, and in that time period, I presented over 10,000 cases before the Court of Common Pleas. So while I'm one of the youngest candidates, my youth has been overshadowed by the amount of experience that I've had. When you say, what did you do for those cases? I actually prepared all those cases, presented them before the court, called witnesses. Every single day I was in the courtroom. And then I got an opportunity to go to the DA's office because one of the assistant DAs went out on maternity leave. They said, come and work for us for 6 months. 8 years later, I tried over 50 jury trials, many felonies, and presented those before juries. Here's an interesting thing, too. I was working full-time for the county, right, in domestic relations. So whenever I would go to try jury trials, I took vacation days from my county job to go work at my other county job. Yeah, my wife's back there. She killed me every time I did that because it cut time that I could do with my family. It's because I've always wanted to serve the community since I felt called to do that. My wife Sarah and I, we live in Boiling Springs. We have 4 sons, 23-year-old, a 21-year-old who just graduated yesterday from the University of Valley Forge with a secondary education major, and then he tells us he wants to be a state police trooper and go to the academy. I have a 15-year-old who just started at Chick-fil-A, and a 13-year-old who dances for Central Pennsylvania Youth Ballet, and he's been in many productions. I want your support to be the next judge of the Court of Common Pleas, because I'll work hard for you, and I will serve my community like I've done my entire career. He's sold up this sign, and I don't want him to hold the stop sign up, so that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Why don't you hang on to the microphone? Okay, first question. Do you believe there is an underrepresentation of women or people of color in the Cumberland County court system? If so, what would you do to alleviate that? What are your views on whether the court deals effectively with racial and gender bias?
Okay, so to answer your question, yes, there is underrepresentation of minorities, whether it doesn't matter if it's people of color or whether it's women. When I went to law school, though, there were more women in my law school class than men. So it begs the question, what happens? Where do they go? Because I went to Dickinson School of Law in Carlisle. Do they go work at other firms? Why don't they stay in Carlisle and practice law? So that'd be one question I have. I've been teaching at the University of Valley Forge for the last 3 years, teaching criminal justice. I think 90% of the students I teach are minority students from either Philadelphia or Maryland. They are all called into the court system to either be police officers, some are going to the FBI, some are going to law school. So I would say that there is a drawing. People are drawn to this field, but what is happening in Cumberland County that they aren't as represented, I don't know. One thing I told my students, though, when I worked as an assistant DA, I never got a call from a police officer who said, I have this certain minority pulled over, and this is the charges that I want approved. That never became a factor. But I will tell you, one thing that I learned from teaching students was you need to understand different ethnic backgrounds when you make a decision. For example, the Hispanic students told me, sorry, he's telling me stop, I'm gonna borrow my last 5 seconds, that in their community, it was a shame to go through counseling. So I think that if you understand the backgrounds of communities, that can help you no matter what your color is.
Thank you, Derek.
Good question. As far as women in the justice system in Cumberland County, we've done fairly well. We have Judge Brubaker on the bench. We have Judge Peck on the bench. We have a court administrator.
Michael.
I'm sorry, we have a court administrator who's a female, and we have Lisa as a row officer with the Orphans Court and the Register of Wills. So in that regard, I think Cumberland County has done fairly well. As far as minorities, we haven't done as well. It's hard to say why, because us here on the dais really don't have any information as to specifics, people that have tried to get into the system, or I don't recall any minority candidates even running for some of these row offices or Court of Common Pleas judge in Cumberland County. But I will say that our system generally is well established to protect folks regarding minorities. We have the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. We also have the EEOC. So there's administrative agencies that folks can go to and investigate any allegation of discrimination. And that's something that could or could not ultimately come into the court system. But I think we've done well with women, not as well with minorities, but it's hard to answer why that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
We absolutely do have a discrepancy between women and minorities in our court system. While Ron did point out that we have 2 women on our current bench, one of those women is running for Superior Court. So if she wins, that will leave 1 female in a bench of 7. When my graduating class was 50-50, you'd think we would have more than 1 or 2 women on a bench of 7 currently serving in Cumberland County. And we have no minorities at all on our court. So we need to do better, but it's not just Cumberland County. This is systemic across the field. In the executive, attorneys in the executive area, there's like less than 20% of female attorneys serving in the senior partners in law firms. So this is across the board. So while they may be 50-50 in the lower levels, it's not that they're not getting there, they're getting there and they're leaving because of, we continue to have, sorry men, but there continues to be a good old boy network and a lot of pockets around. And, you know, there was a recent article in the American Bar Association Journal where there was a senior executive female attorney, and she was told to go cut the cake at a celebration where there were men. And so it does continue to happen, and we need to do better by encouraging and giving opportunity to women and minority to get them into these positions because they certainly have the credentials that they need. Thank you.
Susan?
Thank you. I have a little bit different perspective because I think I'm the oldest person on this panel. When I graduated from law school, it was difficult for me to find a job as a female attorney. There were no women on the bench, not in Cumberland County. There were very few in the DA's office. There were more in the public defender's office. But trying to get a job with a law firm, I was told that I could do family law, but I wasn't allowed to go into court. I wasn't allowed to wear pants. I had to wear a skirt. So when I started out, things were much worse than they are. So I see them as having improved vastly. Although I'm sure if you look just 10 years ago, probably not so much. It took Cumberland County a long time to put a woman on the bench. We were one of the last counties in the neighboring counties to have a woman on the bench, and that's fairly recently. The disparity in the positions in court, I think that's improving a lot for women. Again, people of color are just not represented in Cumberland County in the courthouse. Speaking of how people are treated in court, in criminal court, where I appear most of the time, I can tell you, you can see it. If you sit and watch pretrial day in Cumberland County, you will notice it. You will notice people being treated differently because they're women and not men, people being treated differently because they're people of color. And I want that to stop. That's one of the things I will be concentrating on if I'm lucky enough to be a judge of the Common Pleas Court.
Thank you. Hang on to the microphone, if you will. Okay. Most current judges in Cumberland County have extensive experience with the criminal justice system. Do you believe experience in other areas of the law, for instance, family law, wills and estates, election law, school law, land use issues are important?
I absolutely do. And I think you need someone that's rounded, well-rounded, and has experience in all of those things. Traditionally, our judges come out of the DA's office. And that's a very myopic viewpoint of life to be on the bench and have so many of the judges on the bench being from the DA's office. I think we need more variety. My concern is with people who only do civil law or do agency law coming on the bench, is there is a substantial amount of criminal law done in the common pleas court. And you're dealing with people's freedom in criminal law. You're dealing with people's constitutional rights in criminal law. And I think you have to have somebody that has experience in criminal law on the bench. They should also have experience in civil law, domestic law, contract law, civil rights law. And I do have all that experience. But I think the most, I don't want to say the most critical thing common pleas judges do is criminal, but it certainly has the most serious consequences because people lose their freedom. I think we need to do a better job in custody and domestic cases. And I've talked to the judges about this. If we made sure that we were handling the custody cases with the time and care that they deserve, we might prevent a lot of people from coming into the criminal justice system as juveniles or as adults. I think we need to give more time to making sure kids are in good homes, getting good care, and being nurtured through their lives. Thank you.
Lisa?
Well, I think it's important that we do have a representation on the bench. What we currently have are a majority of criminal attorneys that have risen to the bench, and we do need more. I have a variety of background, just like Susan said, most of us up here do. I have practiced in criminal law, I've practiced in civil law, I've practiced in family and orphans court, and it is time for us to have family and orphans court represented on the bench. Every day I see the weaknesses that our current bench has, and don't get me wrong, they're all intelligent, they do a great job, but their passion is not in there, their heart is not in there. They would much rather sit on a criminal law case than on a family law case. Let's admit it, family law is messy. Most area of law, money solves a lot of problems. Not so much in family law. Family law, it's emotional. You need someone who has the training and the skills and the experience to be able to handle those issues. In private practice, more than a decade of my time I spent doing children and youth work. Again, another area where it's just heart-wrenching watching those families go through those issues and the abuses. Now in the orphans court, I see those same abuses, but in the elderly population. Again, another area that is not represented well on our bench. So I have specialized training as a victims advocate, and I would like to continue to bring those strengths to the bench and represent families in orphans court.
Thank you. Ron?
Very important question. And I'm very passionate about this, that the bench in Cumberland County is way too criminal law emphasis. As I've indicated at other events, looking at the civil side of the docket, if you have a simple civil trial motion in Cumberland County, you get 7 days out of the whole year that you can argue a civil case. That's crazy. With all due respect, people's lives are significantly affected by monetary civil judgments. You can lose your home. If you get a judgment against you, you may not be able to get a mortgage. You may not be able to get a loan. These are significant events in people's lives. And with all due respect to our bench in Cumberland County, not many of them, if any, have any significant substantive civil trial experience. I've had multiple jury trials in front of Skip Ebert. Seemed like a pleasant guy, but on the civil side, he's like a deer in the headlight. I hate to say it, but that's the way it was. And I'm not saying that just to be critical, but I had to go up to the Superior Court multiple times to get cases sent back in which he was the civil trial judge. And what does that do? It costs the taxpayers of Cumberland County more money because you have to try the case multiple times. So I think it's very important we get some people on the bench that have a different viewpoint, particularly have some substantive trial experience, zoning, land use. I have a lot of experience, and we can see the Chick-fil-A situation. At least I would have had experience handling a case like that. Thank you.
Here.
The short answer is yes. and I have that experience. I practiced, like I said, civil cases for the beginning part of my career, and still practicing, but I'm teaching now. But civil cases, the majority of the cases that I handled, and then I came over and did cases in the district attorney's office doing criminal cases. Along with that, I was elected to the South Milton School Board 3 times. So I have a credible background on school law, and serving and passing. I was the chair of the policy committee of the school district, wrote the policies for our school board. Additionally, now I write policies for police departments across the nation. A buddy of mine came with me to an event the other night, and he said, well, you said that, but nobody knows what that means. Well, we heard about Ferguson, correct? You've heard about Ferguson, you've heard about Baltimore, probably heard about New Orleans, and the problems they have in their police departments. The company I work for, based out of California, we write the policies for those police departments. We tried to help Baltimore beforehand, and we came in and helped Ferguson after the fact. So the experiences that those police officers have gone through is based on different statutes under those state laws that govern whether or not police can use force under certain circumstances. I have the experience because I've done the research and I've written the policies on that area as well. So yes, I think you should be well-rounded.
Okay, thank you very much. We have time for a question from the audience. Do we have a question for our judicial candidates? So, oh, wow. All right. Okay. Please do not misconstrue this question as derogatory or disrespectful of veterans. I have heard some candidates discussing the need for a veterans court. Drug courts are designed to focus on specific crimes. It seems a veterans court would focus on a specific group. If the reasoning is because of issues such as PTSD, don't we already address that? Would expanding the mental health courts address these issues? Derek, do you want to?
Sure, I'll go first. The other night when we were at the event, I believe it was the DA Ebert mentioned that he had talked to the colonel in the Veterans Affairs Office about expanding a veterans court, and his comment was that it wasn't necessary at that time. I believe that you can, by expanding mental health court, drug treatment court, you can meet the needs of the veterans at the current time period. Anytime you're going to create a new system, there is a risk that the cost associated with that, and it would be a layer of bureaucracy. So I want to first explore our current programs to see if we can expand those to meet the needs. If we can't, then there would be a need to create a new court system for that reason. So that's my short answer.
Thank you. Ron?
Thanks. Currently, I think I'm getting this list from the Cumberland County website. We have ARD, opioid court, intermediate punishment court, treatment court, Tom's court. Do we need a veterans court? Possibly. I don't know if the data supports the need or not. I know that they have been successful in some neighboring counties, so there might be a need for that. But by the same token, as is alluded to in the question, if you're a court of common pleas trial court judge, you're going to take into account whether a veteran has served in combat, has served overseas, suffers from PS, post-traumatic stress, has other physical ailments that may be drawing them toward opioid use or chronic pain. So these are issues that a trial court judge is going to take into account when they decide what is an appropriate punishment for whatever the crime is. Would it be helpful to have a specialized veterans court? I don't know. I think the jury is still deliberating.
Thank you. Lisa?
Being a veteran, this is one of my stopping points. I do believe we need a veterans court. Most people who are in the military, you have to meet a certain standard just to get into the military. So somewhere along the line, we're breaking these people. Typically, it's PTSD, but it could be other factors. We have them go into to some of the most difficult things that we're asking our military to do, and they're not responding. They're coming back with issues, and we dump them out into a civilian community that doesn't know how to deal with them. We broke them. We should help fix them. And so I think it is necessary that we have a veterans court. Even little Clinton County has a veterans court. It's just scheduling it like any other case, but it's with specialized knowledge and a support system. You're working with the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, veterans organizations come in and they help. There's mentors. Very similar to the other treatment course that we have, but they are successful. They have a 75 to 95% success rate across the state and across the nation. It's such an important issue that our legislature has actually proposed legislation to make it mandatory to have veterans court. When I approached the PJ, or president judge, about having it, he said, well, we don't have a need for it. I said, how do you know? He said, there's not that many veterans coming through. And I said, does anyone even ask when someone's coming through whether they're a veteran or not? He said, nope, no one's asking. So how do we know that we don't have a need? Thank you.
Susan?
I couldn't agree with Lisa more. And this isn't about cost and bureaucracy. This is about human beings. This is about the human beings that we send overseas to risk their lives to defend us. And if we don't owe them that little bit of consideration when they bump up against our criminal court system, then I feel sorry for us. Not only the veterans court people, I've talked to veterans when I've been going door to door, and you know what they say to me? We don't want special treatment. We just want treatment to help us. Helping them is not putting them in jail. A judge can sit there and take into consideration and take account of the fact that they're a veteran and that they serve. But what are you going to do to help them? You can say, well, I'll lessen your sentence, so they can just keep going around and around and around in the criminal justice system. The veterans courts are helpful, and they are everywhere but here, pretty much. On the website that Mr. Tomasko cited, the mental health court statewide, now this doesn't include Cumberland County because that's a very young court and it wasn't included in this, 63% of discharge graduated successfully. 63% of our mental health courts in Pennsylvania. Of our veterans courts in Pennsylvania, 73% graduated successfully. That means those people are not going to be back in our criminal justice system. We've helped them move on. Do we want to keep stacking our prisons, or do we want to help people? That's what the justice system is supposed to do. It's supposed to keep us safe. It's supposed to punish people that need punished, but it's also supposed to help the people that need help, not just warehouse them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, hang on to the microphone. We're going to squeeze in one more question. Oh, Kathy's grimacing. Okay, this is for the judges. All right. Okie dokie. All right. Do you believe that blacks or people of color can be victims? Do you believe they should be allowed to accuse a white person by a white police officer, white DA, and a white judge? Any comments on the Supreme Court case Dred Scott v. Stanford of 1857?
Okay. Somebody else want to go first? Absolutely. It hurts me internally to see the racism that has come back to our country that I thought was gone, I had hoped was gone, or at least was in check at some place in our society, but now it has reared its ugly head again. And yes, a black person, any person, can be a victim of crime. And yes, they should be heard and they should be helped as much as any other person should be helped, any white person. The full force of our DA's office, the full force of our victims' rights advocates, the full force of our government that goes against anybody else should go against white people who abuse or hurt or threaten people of color. That is not who we are. And we need to take a stand again and tell the public in this country that that is not who we are. And I certainly hope Cumberland County tells the other people in Cumberland County and other people visiting this county that that is not who we are. I love to see the signs in all the yards in Cumberland County that say, welcome. You are welcome here. We don't care what your religion is. We don't care what your color is. You are welcome here.
Justice is blind. It doesn't always work that way, but on the bench, I would make sure I was blind to race, to religion, to your sex, to your sexual orientation. That's what our Constitution allows for. That's what we should be given to everybody who comes before us. It shouldn't matter. And I would never say or presume because you fall into a specialized class or you don't look the same as anyone else that you can't suffer as a victim. I kind of, when she read the question, I went, well, of course they could be victims, because of course they could be victims. And I think anyone who would suggest otherwise does not belong on the bench. We just don't need that here. And along with those signs, I'd have that sign, hate has no place here. Have it on the side of my refrigerator. Every morning I see that sign as I'm making my coffee, and it's like, yep, hate has no place here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like to think of the scene in Philadelphia, if you recall the movie with Denzel Washington, when the trial judge indicated that he was completely fair and unbiased regarding the plaintiff in that case, who happened to be a lawyer who suffered from AIDS. But then, if you recall, Denzel Washington's response was, yes, but he doesn't live in this courtroom, Your Honor. And that's an unfortunate fact. Race still plays a part in our criminal justice system, particularly at the death penalty phase. I think that's why the governor is refusing to sign death penalty warrants currently. So it's something we have to be mindful of on the bench. As a trial court judge, you are just supposed to apply the law to the facts. Race should be irrelevant. I think there's a reason that Dred Scott was reversed, 150 years ago.
Yeah, that wasn't even a tough question to hear, let alone struggle with. You know, here I stand as a white male and say, well, absolutely, I believe that they could be victims in a crime. Just like my colleagues here have said, justice is blind. One thing I believe in is a restorative justice approach where you bring the community, the victim, and the offender together to determine what caused the event to occur and work with them. As a society, though, we failed that, especially when the issues that Jamie was talking about earlier with law enforcement. We talked about some issues, racial and bias-based policing. Look, that's a violation of the law, violating people's rights. So absolutely they can be victims. One thing I'm really proud of is the police departments I've worked with across the country, we have this thing where we find and I apologize if anybody here is named Fred, no offense. We look for a Fred, that's just a name, we should use Derek in the future. We look for a Fred in an organization, and that's the person that's going to cause the organization to get sued. A number of those people that we spot are people with some type of underlying hate or bias. And there's no room for that. There's no room for that in professionalism and professional policing. So absolutely they can be victims. And I think we're way past that. We should be way past that as a society, that we would even have that question to struggle with as a society. We can do better than that. So that would happen in my courtroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.